Dear me, it's been a long time since I did my last BMW review, and I will admit that I'm a little bit biased when it comes to this brand because I've owned BMWs pretty much since I had my driving license, and their cars and this brand just has defined what I look for in a car in general. Coming to think of it, even most girls that I've dated have driven BMWs, which is funny. But there's one reason for that, I guess. It's not that this acronym that we like to use here brings me women, BMW, makes sense. It's the seat heaters. BMW always had the fastest seat heaters. Let's see if that's still true, actually. And I think women really like that. But the M4 is a car that many of you wanted to see on my channel. You have asked me about this car basically ever since it came out. So I'm very, very excited that BMW is finally giving me the chance to drive it here. And to spend actually 2 weeks in this car is great. But oops, before I'm boiling some eggs here, let's go on a good drive and see what the M4 feels like on the roads where I've tested so many other cars. I couldn't be more excited about this one here.
Classic BMW design and a tasteful dose of masculinity make the M4 one of the best looking coupes of our time. The famous Hofmeister kink and power dome bonnet exhibit just how well BMW combines tradition and history with modern stylistic elements. You know, sometimes I miss the simplicity of an E36 M3, but the M4 really is a stunning looking car.
BMW has gone from a 4-cylinder engine actually in the very first M3 to their classic inline 6s in the E36 and E46 M3 to a naturally aspirated V8 in the predecessor of this M4, and now we're back finally driving inline 6s which are turbocharged in the M3 and M4. And if you wonder why that's something that excites me, I have to say, growing up here in Germany, having a 6-cylinder BMW always was quite a statement for people, and the one word that German people like to use to describe these 6-cylinder engines from BMW that you always hear is actually silky. And silky perfectly describes what a 6-cylinder engine from BMW feels like. They just feel really, really refined, and they rev so smoothly over the whole rev range. It's something that, yeah, defines the classic BMW engine for me. And having all this performance, we will talk about that a little bit later on here, is very exciting. But I have to say, personally, I wouldn't miss a V8 in this car. I just love this classic BMW layout, and the classic sound actually that you get from a 6-cylinder BMW engine is also something very unique that I like. Of course, they are now using a few tricks here to make this car sound better. They channel some of the induction noise in here using the speakers and whatnot. But the exhaust of this car is also pretty loud, and I have to say, to me it sounds much, much better in person than what you might see on video. The thing is, the car has to sound good for me in a rev range that I'm constantly using. I don't need something that only screams at the top end, and I don't want something that does too many fake noises. I don't find that enjoyable actually. It's something that is fun for a few days, but always gets to my head when I have to drive more than a week with a car like that. I personally don't enjoy that much.
Weight saving played a huge part in the M4's development, just as much as enhanced aerodynamics using BMW's air curtain design and even the famous M intakes on the front fenders to reduce turbulences on the front axle in favor of better steering characteristics. Power comes from a new twin turbocharged 3-liter inline 6 engine with 431 horsepower that can rev up to 7,600 RPM. BMW particularly focused on the oil and cooling system with a lightweight magnesium oil pan for maximum track performance at high lateral acceleration. The active M differential and 550 Nm of torque right from 1850 up to 5500 RPM helped to launch the M4 from 0 to 100 kph in just 4.1 seconds.
So what about the performance? Well, the first thing that you notice is the torque from this motor and how responsive it is from 1500 RPM basically. Wow, this thing pulls. And it's willing to rev to the red line, which says 7,600 RPM. So I would say it's still a typical BMW N engine in that respect, something that is very refined and really likes to rev. But the performance is absolutely extraordinary. I definitely have to say, subjectively for me, this car feels every bit as fast as the C63 AMG that I just tested, and that's probably the biggest compliment that I can make this engine, apart from the fact that it's also very fuel efficient. I've managed to drive this car with 10 liters on average without even trying, and that's a real statement for a performance engine like this, to be honest with you. So the engine is something that when you are not sure about it, you have to experience it, because the performance and its character really is something to behold. I very, very much enjoy driving it, and I'm glad that BMW has gone this route and gives us an inline-six engine again. Just a great power plant. So by now you guys will have noticed that I'm not shifting gears myself. I'm driving a car with the optional 7-speed DCT dual clutch transmission from BMW. And I have to say, of course, I tried getting a manual, like I always do, but my press contact at BMW basically talked me out of that with full confidence, saying that they are pretty sure that I'm going to like this. So it's interesting, and actually fair enough, because they sell most of these cars with this transmission here. This 7-speed dual clutch has an interesting system that BMW calls Drive Logic, that gives you the chance to set up the speed of this dual clutch system in 3 different stages actually. The first one is the slowest setting, and that's actually something that I personally only used driving this car in the full automatic mode with the engine in the efficiency mode in a town when I was driving slowly or tried to get a good fuel consumption. In the manual mode, it's not that pleasant actually. It's too slow and unresponsive. I like the middle setting the best. And the transmission is really responsive and shifts very fast. The third stage, Sport Plus, or yeah, Drive Logic 3, I would call the Klitschko mode, because then the gears are forced in with brute violence, and I wouldn't use that on a public road if I'm honest with you. It just feels too painful for me doing that to the car. But the second stage is really where this car starts to feel like one of the best dual clutch systems that I've ever used. The only thing that I could criticize is that on upshifts there's still a little shock going through the car that makes it feel a little bit unrefined for me sometimes. I would love to have a more seamless upshift actually. I mean, put everything into the sport mode in the middle setting, and the M4 is at its absolute best on a back road. The balance and the control of this chassis is just extraordinary. I feel like I have more mid-corner grip in this car and more traction coming out of corners, so I actually end up getting a little bit cocky because I have more confidence to get on the gas early in this car than in the C63 AMG, and of course I have still this monument of power under the hood, so that I often get a little bit of oversteer here in this M dynamic mode, which allows you to have a little bit of slipper. That's actually really, really enjoyable for experienced drivers. This feels like a proper sports car to me. It's so nice to drive, spirited. Wow. And I love the feel of these optional ceramic brakes that I have in this car. They have a really nice and firm pedal feel. The steering could have a little bit more feel for my taste. That's something that I could criticize in this car. There's not much feel coming through for the road, but apart from that, it's perfectly weighted. It's just such a playful car, the M4. In a way, you have to be a bit careful with this performance level here, but wow. This typical BMW driving feeling is coming through. This pleasure of driving that they always describe is fully alive in the M4 for me, and with this great low mounted seating position here, I just always feel like I have full control over the car, and that's so important for me. It always makes me wonder why there aren't more manufacturers that build their cars in this fashion, because it doesn't matter if you drive a 1 Series or a 7 Series, you always have this great low seating position in the BMW that integrates the driver so nicely. Yeah, maybe I'm too positive about this car, but it's such a riot to drive. This has been one of the most enjoyable and special test drives of this whole year for me. I fully admit that I'm a bit biased when it comes to BMWs, but I guess that's okay. I've shared a few critical points here and there. And I personally would still get this car with a manual transmission, if I'm honest with you. The dual clutch for me is a great system here, but it's not the best that I've driven, and it's not my favorite actually. I would still go for a manual because they have one on sale. So if you're like me, old school driver, definitely have a look at the manual. Personally, I switched from a 3 Series to a 1 Series because I wanted something that feels a little bit small and more agile on the roads, and that's the thing that does start my brain when I think about it. Driving the M4 here, I was really surprised how agile it feels, and the performance in corners is mind-blowing. And still, I'm really curious to see the new BMW M2 coming out next year. If they make that with a manual transmission, it could be one of the most enjoyable cars we've seen in the last 5 years. I'm pretty sure about that. So hopefully you enjoyed this review and will let me know in the comments below so I get the chance to drive more BMWs in the future maybe. And yeah, until then, I see you in one of my next videos, guys, because this has not been the last one that I'm shooting this year. There should be a little bit more content coming for you, so stay tuned. Tell me what you think about the M4, and I see you in the next video.